Welcome to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast.
Every week, they talk about the Vancouver Canucks with a fair amount of nonsense thrown in.
Sure, they're never the first with the news, nor the best connected, and definitely more off the rails than on.
But they've been talking puck the longest, and that counts for something, right?
So strap in for the longest running, best mediocre Canucks Hockey Podcast.
It's C4 with Chris and Anna.
Hi, Craig. Kind of funny, though, that I say hi, Craig, at that point, because he's the only one, or she, Craig's a robot, only one with me. As we had talked about last week, Anna, she went home. She actually joined me last week from abroad. We were able to record, but obviously, being the holiday season, she was quite busy and wasn't able to make this recent episode. So it's just me for a bit, but I put out a call. Emergency broadcast. Hey, is there anyone out there in the Smylosphere that wants to come and talk Vancouver Canucks or Vancouver Golden Knights hockey? And a call that I made was answered. I'll be joined by Derek a little bit later. He's going to talk a little bit about the Vancouver Canucks specifically. We'll get into sort of the week that was, some of the things that have been happening, obviously the Quinn Hughes trade, and just get the thoughts of someone other than myself and Anna to see if one, she and I are baselining at least the feelings of the Smylosphere, but more importantly, not completely off our rockers. I mean, Anna, she's pretty with it. Me, though, not so much. The Vancouver Canucks, though, and the Vancouver Golden Knights have both been in action. I'll do an abbreviated rewind, just talk a little bit about what went down over the course of the week that was, and set up the week that will be, which will be kind of light. It is the holiday season. Now, we talked about it last week. I'll talk about it again. There will not be an episode next week. Anna will still be away. I myself will be heading up to visit family for a holiday weekend to myself. So we are going to take that weekend as sort of our quote-unquote Christmas break. Anna and I, though, will be back to close out the year and introduce the new one a week after. So for those keeping track at home, don't look for an episode on the 29th of December. Look for that episode to arrive on the 5th of January. But with all of that said, let's dive into Rewind. So we'll kick off Rewind talking about the Vancouver Canucks. My oh my, is this Canucks team really looking to prove Anna and I wrong? They beat the New Jersey Devils, the first game on the road trip, first game without Quinn Hughes. And I just did not see how they were going to continue to stay in the state of New York and find two more wins, let alone then go into Boston and get a third. And well, that's what exactly they did. Getting things underway against the New York Rangers. And if you recall, Anna was actually relatively optimistic that they could possibly find a way to get points. Demko got himself a shutout in that game, 3-0 for the Vancouver Canucks. But if you look at the shot totals, Vancouver did what they do best, not shoot the puck, but when they do, score goals. PDO in the veins. But we also started to see some adjustment with how the roster is shaping up. Marco Rossi playing that center role, alleviating the workload that was generated onto the shoulders of David Kampf, considering PD is still out of the picture. We saw Liam Ogren actually get his first within a Vancouver Canucks uniform, and that kid's, got some hands on him, something we're going to see, or we saw as the week went on. But the Vancouver Canucks, for all intents and purposes, did what they needed to do to shut down the New York Rangers with the few opportunities the Rangers had. And Thatcher Demko does what he does. He Demko'd the Rangers. Now, Canucks get the win. There's just no way they're going to go and beat the New York Islanders. But yeah, that's what they did. Or arguably, Kiefer Sherwood did. Kiefer had been a little bit quiet when it came to activity on the score sheet for the past while. That has since changed. David Kampf got his first as a Canuck. Kiefer Sherwood got the next three. If it wasn't for the fact that Anders Lee was able to break up the shutout late in the third period, Thatcher Demko could have had back-to-back shutouts. And unlike the game against the Rangers, the game against the Islanders, the Vancouver Canucks elected to shoot the puck quite a bit. They dominated the game. It was theirs really through 2.5 periods. And even that half period that it wasn't, it was already well in hand. The Vancouver Canucks were clearly going to win that game. So when Kiefer went and got the empty net to get himself the hat trick, up that trade value, maybe he's worth 2 first-round picks now. Vancouver Canucks score themselves this, second win or third win on the road. But back-to-back against the Boston Bruins. Ain't no way that the Vancouver Canucks would be able to beat the Bruins in Boston, Saturday having played in New York on the Friday with Kevin Lankinen in net. And, apparently no one told the Vancouver Canucks this. The game was back and forth. Boston, to their credit, understood that Vancouver was the team playing on the second of a back-to-back. Vancouver looked like the team playing the second of back-to-back. They had generated, I think, like 6 shots midway through the second period, but surprisingly had themselves a 2-1 lead at that point. Max Sasson got himself a goal, rewarding himself for the contract that he just signed with the team. Linus Karlsson, really nice goal on the power play. And then also getting a really, really nice goal in the third period. And then Liam Ogren, again, this is a kid who's actually showing he's got a little game in the early going, getting himself a goal as well. But if it wasn't for Andrew Peeke scoring late in the third period, the Vancouver Canucks could have walked away with a regulation win. Now, shootout hockey. I don't exactly understand what's changed. And I, in fairness, don't watch a lot of hockey outside of what the Vancouver Canucks are on in the NHL. But it occurs to me that the Vancouver Canucks are a good shootout team. Not because they score a lot of goals in the shootout, but that their goaltending tandem somehow finds a way to stop all the shots on them, or to stop as many as they need to ensure the Canucks win. Sure, it felt like that shootout was going to go on forever, and if it wasn't for the fact that, Liam Ogren scored the game-winning goal, it probably is still be going on as I am recording. But credit to Kevin Lankinen, he stopped every shot that the Bruins took, including a couple that Lankinen had no clue where they were, only to learn that they didn't go in the net. Oh, and they did benefit from a goal, no goal when it came wickedly off the crossbar. But as we know here in Vancouver Canucks hockey land, that just means good positioning. So the Vancouver Canucks go 3-0 over the course of the week, and on the road right now, as they are about to, and I'm, spoiler alert, I'm recording this segment on Monday morning. They're going to be going into Philadelphia to take on the Flyers in the first experience of Tocchet hockey in a post-Tocchet Vancouver Canucks world. I honestly don't know what to predict at this point, other than to suggest that the Vancouver Canucks have proven that they can win on the road. I have no belief in what they may or may not do, but I'm going to say they're going to actually get the dub against the Flyers to go 5-0 in a post-Quinn Hughes world. Looking ahead after Christmas, as the Vancouver Canucks will return home. They get the 23rd through 26th off, but take on the San Jose Sharks in a quick homestand on Saturday night, the 27th. I don't know if the Vancouver Canucks win this game. San Jose has been looking like a much better team. The Vancouver Canucks at some point are going to find that adrenaline that they've been, playing on will wear off. I think that occurs having a lot of time away from the rink over the course of the holidays. So out of 2 games, I'm going to expect that the Vancouver Canucks get 2 points. Now, the Canucks weren't the only Vancouver hockey team with action over the course of this week. The Vancouver Golden Knights had a couple of home games, one against the Ottawa Charge and one against the Montreal Victoire. Now, again, thinking back to last week, Anna had a feeling that the Vancouver Golden Knights were going to get a win over Ottawa and potentially lose to Montreal. I was a little bit more bullish in my approach, suggesting that they would get 2 wins if Sarah Nurse were to return to action, but it would only get 1 if she didn't. Now, news broke that Sarah Nurse is on the LTIR. She is likely away from the game for a few more weeks to come. So, based on that prediction, a win against the Charge and a loss against the Victoire is what I had. And, ultimately that's what occurred. I must give some Big credit, though, to the Golden Eyes for their record, but also the play at home here in Vancouver. I don't know if it's that the team, you know, siphons the energy in the Pacific Coliseum. Like, it just, they appear to be a much more confident, loose, and I mean loose in the sense of not gripping the puck or gripping the stick too hard or fighting the puck. But in the Pacific Coliseum, they're a lot more comfortable with what's taking place. Whereas on the road, they seem to be a little bit more hit and miss. We saw Katie Chan, get that first goal, young local kid, and opening up an account not only here in Vancouver but with the PWHL. Jen Gardner had another great game, giving the Vancouver Golden Knights that 2-0 lead. Unfortunately, third period is when Ottawa went and broke the shutout that Kristen Campbell was attempting to manufacture. But it was arguably a pretty solid game for the Golden Eyes against the Charge, who they had lost to, previously on the road. That brings us to the game against the Montreal Victoire. So up until this point, the Golden Eyes were undefeated at home. They had the overtime win against the Seattle Torrent. They had beaten the Charge. They had beaten, I'm still getting used to the team names. The New York Siren. Sorry, it took me a moment to remember. But the Montreal Victoire, pretty solid team. We saw Marie-Philippe Poulin come in and show why she is a superstar hockey player. And Montreal took that offensive prowess and put it to good use against the Golden Eyes. Not to suggest that the Golden Eyes were out of this game from the get-go, but it's definitely a harder game to win when you find yourself behind the 8 ball early. We also, though, saw Vancouver in the third period really kick it into another gear, and had it not been for a distinct kicking motion, arguably an entirely different result. Lachlan, who joined us a couple of weeks back and was talking about the Golden Knights, he had commented about how in what world is that a distinct kicking motion. And I find it funny, and not to suggest that he's wrong in his assessment, but in what world do we, as a sort of hockey fandom, know what a distinct kicking motion is? I'm kind of torn. Like, I understand why you don't want players kicking pucks. It introduces a vector of danger into the game, especially if skates come off the ice. But I'm of the opinion that the rule as it exists creates the potential for discrepancy, because it's talking about distinct kicking motion as into the movement of a player's leg and skate. I feel that if you were to go and adjust the language of the rule to recognize that skate must stay on ice, one, but two, if you were to use your skates to sort of deflect a puck in so much that you're just adjusting your legs, like, so it's like banked in off your skates, I don't see that as being a problem. To me, that should be a goal. But hey, who am I? Just a scrub podcaster who happens to think he knows a thing or two about the game. But in losing to the Montreal Victoire, the Vancouver Golden Knights finally lose one at home. Now, looking ahead at their schedule, the Golden Knights do have one game upcoming this week. It is a home game, but not at home. They're going to be taking on Minnesota in Edmonton on Saturday. And the difficult thing for me is I do not know anything about the Minnesota Frost. I don't understand how they've been performing over the course of I just don't know how they've performed over the course of the past season and into this current one. All I can do is I can look at the standings and see that the Frost are in fourth, but just slightly above the Golden Eyes with a game in hand. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and despite the game being in Edmonton, suggest that the Golden Knights get themselves a W against the Minnesota Frost. That is just vibes. It truly is vibes. I don't know. I don't know enough, unfortunately, about the rest of the league. But that said, If you live in Edmonton or the surrounding area, this is an opportunity to see the PWHL and the Vancouver Golden Knights take on the Minnesota Frost. Again, a home game for Vancouver, albeit in Edmonton. I believe there's actually another game later on the season taking place in Edmonton. But I really appreciate how the PWHL is expanding their footprint with these sort of away series games. We saw some in Vancouver last year prior to the announcement of the Golden Eyes. And I would love to see a sold out or relatively close to being sold out barn at Rogers Place. So predictions, as I'd said, Vancouver Canucks, they're going to get a win against the Flyers. They're going to lose against the Sharks. And with the Golden Eyes, they're going to get themselves a win against Minnesota. I could look even further ahead because, again, we're not going to be back until the new year. The Vancouver Canucks will be taking on the Kraken on the 29th on a quick road trip, only to then return home to take on the Philadelphia Flyers on the 30th. They then get themselves a short 2-day break before having another back-to-back at home. Seattle Kraken in town on Friday night, Boston Bruins on the Saturday. I don't know what the Canucks will do there. Let's see. They'll get a win against the Kraken on the road. They'll probably lose to the Flyers here at home. And then Kraken will probably get the win on the Saturday or on the Friday in the Boston. I hate to do it. I think the Canucks lose that one too. So that means they would get a possible 2 out of 8 points in the week that won't be for us because, again, we're taking a week off. And then looking ahead at the Golden Eyes. So the Golden Eyes will be playing on the road in the Prudential Center against the New York Sirens on the 31st. So I'm gonna suggest that Vancouver loses this, having lost already on the road once to the Siren. I don't think it'll be as big of a loss. They lost 5-1 previously, and then they're playing the Fleet on the 3rd. In that game, that one's actually in Detroit. We say Vancouver wins that game on the road, being that Boston's not playing at home. Again, very bold predictions based on absolutely nothing other than pure vibes. Anna and I will be back in a couple of weeks' time, though. We'll talk about those games that I've just prognosticated for. We'll talk about everything else that's probably gone on and transpired over the course of the 2 weeks. But I'm going to take a short break before I bring in our guest, Derek. You're listening to the C4 Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna, who's not here, Chris, who is, and Craig.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on it.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
What a week it was if you happen to be a Vancouver Canucks fan. It was either positive or it was not so much, and that's based on the fact that the team has strung together a series of wins. Now, as everyone knows, Anna is away, so tapping in, having put the call out for help here is Derek. Derek, I have connected with in Wyatt, who knows what he did and why we have a feud with him's Discord server, and so graciously stepped up. So, but thanks, Derek.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here.
So before we get into the Vancouver Canucks week that was, how avid of a podcast consumer are you? Because, I mean, there's 137 different Vancouver Canucks podcasts, and we're the best mediocre, so it's probably going to put us at the 138th out of 137.
Well, to be honest, I watched a little bit of Steve Dangle during the pandemic, and then found my way to Wyatt through Canucks Army back when he was doing the podcast a couple years ago. And he was a frequent guest, and then, mainly in that ecosystem. And now here.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I appreciate you stepping up to the longest running, best mediocre. So the whole Wyatt and Bowman thing, that's just a feud that goes back to the dawn of the podcast. They know what they did, which is good because I don't. But no, thanks for stepping up and helping us out here on C4. So let's get into the Vancouver Canucks. As we've already sort of set up, the Vancouver Canucks chose to win a bunch of games this past week. We here at C4 are known of being slightly pessimistic. I think Anna's prognostication had the Canucks getting 3 out of a possible 6 points. I had them going over. And the Vancouver Canucks chose to prove us both wrong by getting a 6 out of 6. Does that shock you, or is this is a new team? Because clearly Quinn Hughes was the problem.
I don't want to say Quinn Hughes was the problem because clearly he's a superstar, and I think we're doing a little bit of revisionist and confirmation bias by being like, oh no, we traded him, it's all fine now. But you can clearly see that this team has a weight lifted. I think it was pretty obvious to many that Quinn wasn't playing up to his usual standards, maybe on the ice, showing frustration a lot more readily. And, maybe that's something like a trade was coming down, especially when the team slumped so hard in the beginning of the year. And those type of things, they just kind of happen too. And like the players we got back for the trade, like we got Zeev William, we got Ogren, we got Rossi. They fill a lot of holes for us right now too. It's like a lot of other people have been saying. I think it's to be expected that we started to throw a little bit of wins on the board here.
Well, I guess I don't disagree with sort of how William and Ogren specifically are filling some holes. I still feel there's a giant hole in the blue line. No disrespect to Zeev William. Kid comes with a whole lot of confidence, but he is not Quinn Hughes. But is this just a combination of a lighter dressing room and a hot goaltender and Thatcher Demko, in your opinion? Like they go into New York, they win a couple, beat the Devils, then beat the Rangers, and then they continue that by beating the Islanders and finding a way to beat the Bruins. We're seeing production from some of the usual suspects. Kiefer Schode working on his stellar play to net the Vancouver Canucks Pirates bounty when he gets dealt before the deadline. You've got Ogren, who nifty hands on that kid, gets himself a couple goals. Williams played well. He's getting, first line power play time, essentially filling in to where Quinn Hughes was, maybe not to the same extent as to the minutes. But I get that they were maybe bound to win at some point, but this was not a good hockey team prior to the trade. I don't see how they have become a good hockey team since, despite the holes being filled.
Sorry, let me rephrase. I wasn't talking about Zeev William as like filling in for Quinn Hughes. I was talking more Rossi since we had David Count as our number one center. That being said, though, yeah, I mean, Thatcher has been gone back to his, Vesna quote unquote calibers of being very solid net. And even this past game, Kevin Lankinen had a really solid game and a game where, by all rights, we should have lost.
Yeah. Yeah, PDO benders are like that. I mean, the game against the Boston Bruins, the Vancouver Canucks, I think after almost 2 periods had 6 shots on net, and yet had carried a lead for a good portion of it. Credit to Kevin Lankinen, who, and then in the shootout, does what Kevin Lankinen does. He stops pucks. I truly don't understand how Kevin Lankinen and Thatcher Demko are as good in the shootout as they are. Like, it just seemed, and I don't watch enough of the rest of the league to draw a fair comparison. So it's possible that goaltenders are just significantly better in the shootout in the more recent era. But how many times do we see the Canucks go into a shootout? They just need to score 1 goal and they win. So credit to Lankinen for making stops, including some that he wasn't even aware he had. But actually, you mentioned Marco Rossi in coming in to fill in for, well, I guess the injured Elias Pettersson, putting David Kampf back to where he should never have gotten to. He's definitely more reliable in the middle of the ice, especially on the top line. His face-off percentage is higher than Kampf's has been. They're still relying on Aturatu for the more crucial face-offs, it seems. But back to that question I had asked, like, is this just a better team without Quinn? Like, is it that? Yes, there were holes previously, and they filled them well enough that now they're back to being the, hey, we might be in it to win it phase.
I think, to be honest, the Canucks, especially this year, have used players like Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes as a crutch. They have the talent, they're the superstars. And, if you looked at early in the year where everyone was going off on Adam Foote about his deployment with Elias Pettersson and how he was the only top line center to get the share of defensive starts that he did, and every other top line center had more starts in the ozone. Face-off wise, it's clear that this team had pigeonholed itself maybe through, you know, lack of moves in the off season or just the way things were going with injuries. They had to heavily rely on these two players. And I think part of the problem with that is you see a lot of the times that they were just deferring to Quinn, and especially on the power play, they defer to Quinn and then, it became predictable and they get nothing done.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, we even, was it the game or the penultimate game before the trade? There was a power play where was Operation Get the Puck to Quinn and let him skate around the offensive zone with it for 2 minutes. The Canucks, we're getting zero value out of that. Team's completely understood that you just prevented Quinn from finding a shooting lane, and if he's not going to dish it off to anyone, you don't really have to cover. But I guess I do sort of subscribe to the idea that you share that the Vancouver Canucks were using, Quinn and Petey as crutches. Obviously, Quinn's no longer in the picture. They're going to have to adjust the plan. Petey, still injured, so that crutch is also missing. Is this just a team then, fighting through adversity and using the underdog status to produce the record they have? Like, prior to the trade, Vancouver Canucks were dead last in the league. Now they're 4 points out of a wild card spot in the West, fighting their way up out of top 3 draft position. So is this again that underdog story? They're punching above their weight. Everything will come back down to earth, or do you honestly think that maybe the team has figured things out and now they're, PDO bender or not, going to go on a run?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. Like, as a pessimistic Canucks fan myself, or maybe one
You
leans
fit in
to
well
be
here. That's a
cynical.
pessimistic podcast, yeah.
I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop. Even in the 23-24 season when everything was going right, I'm sitting there waiting for it to all fall apart. And near the end, it kind of did. Like, not like in terms of us losing and dropping in standings or not making the playoffs, and we had a good playoffs run. But if you look at the way Pettersson started to perform after the All-Star break, the numbers started to drop off.
Mhm.
And you could see that as like a shoe dropping, that, like something was not sustainable, or, something happened. And now we know there's this big Pedersen Miller rift. So maybe that had started to occur around that time. Who knows, right? But,
Yeah.
as a Canucks fan who's seen this type of thing before late in the season where they play themselves out. At least it's happening early this time, right? At least we're on like game 36 coming up here. Like, there's time for us to, if you're on Team Tank, for us to fall back onto the ground and lose and finish at the bottom.
It's funny. I mean, the memes right now about where the Vancouver Canucks are in their rebuild, like the whole banner raising of the fastest rebuild in NHL history, 2 games or whatever it was. You've got confusion. Like, is this a team tank or is this a go for it? It's based on the fact that the Vancouver Canucks, since that trade, have won games. Like, it's unreal. I as I alluded to earlier, being that we're a pessimistic podcast, I had them over. I was maybe being a little facetious in that regard, but no way did I see that the Vancouver Canucks were going to go and get a possible 6 out of 6 in the week. I mean, if we include the Devils game, which was Sunday morning, 8 out of a possible 8 points. And the one, point they gave up in the shootout is to a team in the East. So doesn't matter. Like, I genuinely look at them going into Philadelphia for the game tomorrow night and winning. I can't believe I'm saying the Canucks are going to go into Philly and beat the Flyers against their former coach and Rick Tocchet. But why? Like, how do I not suggest that that's not possible? Thatcher Demko will be back in net, having got himself a couple of nights of rest. You're getting offensive production throughout the lineup. You're getting luck in your favor. Like, the fact that the Vancouver Canucks against the Bruins, again, I think it was 6 shots and 2 goals. I mean, you keep that up, good things happen. And then, the holiday break occurs, and who knows what happens when they come out of that. But, if you were to be put into a position, would you choose the Canucks are going to potentially make the playoffs? Or would you be of the opinion, no, I think they're probably closer to a tank? Like, if you had to pick a lane.
That's like the worst question because I have total fence around this question. I think it remains to be seen. Like,
Okay.
we've had this week of success, and that's great. And to be honest, as pessimistic as we are, you've got to admit, watching the Canucks win game feels at some level good, right?
Mhm.
Like, it sucks to lose regardless of how good for the future it might be or how we're bringing Gavin McKenna to Vancouver, keeping him home, like all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't feel great to lose. And even for this team, like, you might call Adam Foote or see Adam Foote say, hey, like there's a bunch of games that we should have won and say it's a bit of copium, as the kids say. But he's kind of right. There were a lot of games where they just had a breakdown and everything fell apart. Or they went into third period and everything started falling apart. Right.
Yeah. Normally I wouldn't allow anyone to sit on the fence, especially if it was Anna. But I mean, I will give you an allowance to do so because I'm of the opinion that I don't mind if the Vancouver Canucks win games. Yes, I understand that your draft position is punished as a result, but I would like the Vancouver Canucks to continue to offload some of their veteran players and get younger, get more prospects in the system, acquire picks. Like, to me, if you're just a young team who wins because, sometimes young teams do that, I would much rather enjoy watching the hockey than, as you said, like, no one likes watching losing hockey. I don't. I mean, I should qualify that. I've said on this podcast many times. I enjoy a game where the Vancouver Canucks lose, but it could have gone either way in like a high-scoring affair. I don't like the fact that they lose.
You could also argue that a lot of games in the Tocchet era where they were winning were very hard to get through.
Oh, it
With
was the
the
most
way that
boring
the team
hockey
played.
ever. Yeah, I mean, I think it was like if you look at the Vancouver Canucks shot production 5-on-5, they've actually been shooting the puck and not getting decimated against the competition. They're doing better than the Philadelphia Flyers. They're simply just not getting the offensive production correlate to the games where they get the actual shots up. But I concede foot hockey tends to be a touch more exciting at times than Tocchet hockey was. Like, Anna and I have talked on the show how you watch Derek Heedle come to the team. Oh man, this kid is exciting. He's got, hockey sense. He's going north, south, east, west. This is great. And then Tocchet's telling us that, he needs to know how to play within the system. And then, Derek, He'll over the course of the offseason saying, yeah, I was confused. I get mixed messages like, here I'm supposed to play well, but you want me to not play the way I'm playing well. Anyhow.
And it's not even that. It's, like you said, it's nice to see them winning, but you want to see them upload, some of these UFAs. And it's unfortunate. I like a guy like Kiefer Sherwood, but if you're committing to the rebuild, you've got to commit to the rebuild, right?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
you can't afford to sign Kiefer at like 5 million. Like he's now too old for this team.
no, and that's saying like, do you back the Brinks truck up for Kiefer? No, you don't back the Brinks truck up. You sort of concede you're going to lose the offensive production. So instead of backing the truck up, letting him walk for free, you find a way to get something value for him. The thing about the going back to that sort of the meme of the fastest rebuild in history, 2 days. My concern is that one trade and what it's done could have the potential of changing the perspective of ownership, who, according to Jim Rutherford, are open to getting younger and to being rebuilt. Though, the scuttlebutt is that when Rutherford talks about a rebuild, he's not talking about a rebuild. He's talking about the quick turnaround that Jim Benning used to tell us all about, which there ain't no quick turnarounds in this league. But
Yeah, and I mean, there is that concern too. Like, the owner of the team is not known for allowing their presidents to do their own work or allowing their GMs to, do their own work. That's, part of the reason people speculated Jim Benning lasted so long is because, it allowed the owner to play out some fantasies there. But to be honest, I think they just kind of have to force it out. Like, you get to the trade deadline, you're moving out pieces like Kiefer, you know, honestly going to your goalies and saying like, do you want to be here? Like, can we get a trade? Like, ideally, you don't have both Thatcher Demko and Kevin Lankinen in your net for the next year. You have room for a younger guy to start coming up. Uh, and
well,
then
do you trade Demko? Like, Edmonton might be looking for a goaltender again.
I see. I'm on team keep Demko, see if Lankinen wants out anywhere. But that's might also be the wrong take because Demko's no movement clause hasn't kicked in yet. You have Thatcher Demko for what is it, 8.5? If you can showcase him in this next stretch and up to the trade deadline that he's healthy, he's able to take on game loads. Like he played 3 games in a row, and granted, he just came off injury, played 3 games in a row, and that's not much, but that's something, right? It shows that he's able to play 3 back-to-backs at this point, and you're hoping that he plays continuously for another like month or two while we're getting up to the trade deadline. And because of Kevin Lankinen's no move clause, you might be forced to trade Demko. I think Demko is a good goalie to have as a leader for someone coming up. And I think Kevin Lankinen can do a good job with that too. I just think with the stuff that Demko's experienced with his injuries, his level of play, I think he raises that bar a little bit. But you also your contract locked here. Like Lankinen has a no move clause, so you might be forced to trade Demko.
Yeah, I understood that when they signed Lankinen, that was Demko insurance. I was somewhat shocked when they then signed Demko for the money they did. And it's not to suggest Thatcher can't be worth that, but there were still so many unanswered questions. I think he's alleviated some of that concern this season. Albeit, moderately, there's still the injury problem. We don't know what the true problem was in his latest injury, other than the team saying it wasn't at all related to his Peter Piper picked a pickled peppers muscle. Can't remember what it is, but I make it up all the time. So, I am of the belief that if a team were to come and offer you something reasonable, you consider it. But then you trade Demko, that is rebuild. Like, that is not like, oh, hey, we're going to quickly turn it around with Lankinen in net. I think you're positioning it as, we're going to turn it around. Lankinen will be our goaltender who will help, to your point, be that, role model for whomever is actually going to take the job when the window opens again. On that sort of topic, though, we've seen quite a bit come out over the course of this past week in the post-Quinn Hughes era. Anna and I touched on sort of some of the news that had broken just after the trade, how it seems that Quinn was Team PD during the Miller-Pettersson war, but then had not been Team PD after all. There was the team dinner where PD and Demko were not invited. Not to suggest that they had to be, but a small intimate group, you would think some of the guys that he's grown up with in the organization would have been there or would have been invited. We don't know. But then we've also seen other things. So news had come out from Abbotsford that the Abbotsford Canucks still have yet to receive their Calder Cup rings. Now, that story has sort of been brewing since the start of December. And then the Vancouver Canucks sent out a Christmas card to all their season ticket holders, essentially doing a Canucks themed parody of the 12 Days of Christmas. And it offered the 5 Calder rings, which then led into season ticket holders are getting 5 Calder rings on a card before the actual players who won the Calder Cup got theirs. Patrick Johnston, friend of the show, he unloaded on the organization about this. And it wasn't just unloading on them for being, I don't know how to describe it any other way, cheap, for the fact that the Calder Cup rings were still not yet available. But we learned that the Vancouver Canucks apparently weren't meeting NHL standards for their medical staff last season and had arguably not been paying for people they needed. Why I bring that up now is that ties into how we've seen injuries be such an issue within the organization over the past few seasons. There have been so many players where it has been questionable, where we as fans are like, no, that doesn't even pass the sniff test on our end, and we're how many ever degrees separated from the action. How can we, based on this, trust that Demko is actually healthy? Demko will tell us, but hockey players will play through a whole lot of different problems. How do we trust that PD is healthy if and when he returns tomorrow against the Flyers or after the holiday break? I mean, how do you sort of interpret all of this information, especially now learning what Patrick has shared?
I think it's, for one, let's focus on the rings first. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that an organization that has found their first taste of success in winning, a cup for the cabinet, so to speak, that they fumbled the celebration with the players so egregiously. And look, other teams, they had, private ceremonies. It wasn't necessarily going to be with the fans, and people have left the team, so you make a little social media video of them getting the ring and stuff like that. But to not have anything in December going on to January is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And not only that,
the players, when asked about this, they're like, yeah, they did sizing, but we haven't heard anything. Like that's weird. Like, if it's taking a while or there's a problem, I would think an organization would have at least said something like that to the guys that are getting the rings.
not even the players. I think as an organization, you would do damage control and say, hey, look, the players did sizings in the summer. The rings are coming. There was an unexpected, unfortunate delay. This shouldn't be something that's coming out in an article that the the reporter failed to get an answer from the Canucks, and then they do a little PR statement afterwards, trying to do damage control. This should be coming from the team, and they had this date in January that was like a mystery event. And maybe that was their projection for the rings, but
And that's been
this stuff,
rescheduled.
yeah, this stuff should be, communicated at the very least because it's important to the community and important to the city. And I think that speaks to kind of this degree of how do I word this? This degree of separation between the organization and the community that's been happening in the past couple of years. That like it doesn't seem like it was back in the day, with Hemrick, with Daniel, with Naslin, with Linden, or even with Horvat, where like the team felt like it was, Vancouver's team. Like they felt very close. You saw them do all these charity events. And yes, they have some charity events and stuff now, but it doesn't feel like it's either being reported about because they're not making that readily available, or they're doing more insular events such as the Dyson Ice Charity Gala and stuff. But it seems like there's a disconnect between the organization and the community, and I feel like this situation is just going to make that worse because
Yeah, I agree. I mean, PJ actually refers to the fact that this team does seem disconnected from the community, and he referenced many of the players that you had done or had just done. I am of the opinion that is a product of ownership, and which seems odd because if there's one thing about this ownership group is they try to pride themselves on being, you know, anchored in Vancouver. Like the number of times that we would hear that Francesco, grew up on the east side of Vancouver, and that seems to have disappeared. Like, early days of ownership, Vancouver. We saw leaders within the organization, the different players that you had listed, very much involved. They got the market. And then now you've got maybe players that get the market. This conversation had come up yesterday in Wyatt's Discord server, where conversation of, Zadorov, missed in the Vancouver Canucks or not. Obviously, the conversation then talks about the Brinks truck and whether or not Zaddy would have been worth it. But as I had contributed, he understood Vancouver. Like, you can say what you want about his ability to play the game, equivalent to the amount of money he makes, but I feel he would have been great on this team from a leadership perspective. I've heard so many things about how he had such a presence in the room. And he, even in the short time he was here, he understood what Vancouver sort of needs from its sports players. It's being connected, being representative of the market. I remember an interview during the offseason before he signed in Boston, and how he had discussed how in the short time that he'd been here, he had been golfing, he loved the area, and most importantly, just the way the vibe of the fans, the people. That's missing. And we look to Quinn. Quinn Hughes at the time was captain. I actually wonder now, was Quinn Hughes made captain in an effort to try to keep him? I mean,
I think that's a fair question, honestly.
Right? I'm not trying to suggest you make someone else the captain. I don't know, but he never seemed comfortable in the role.
Yeah, and I mean, the answer to that was, he's young, like he'll grow into it. And to an extent, I think they're right. I think he did grow into it somewhat, but I think the big thing that was missing from Quinn Hughes' captaincy, and maybe there's some contributing factors with the pandemic and stuff like that. And yes, he had some programs later on, like he had the Quinn 43 for first responders, bringing them into games. But for this for this fan base that has had Vancouver Canucks so deeply entrenched in them for so long, just doing a ticket program is frankly not enough.
Yeah. I recall when Trevor Linden became captain. So Stan Smyl was captain at the time. Stan still played on the team, but transitioned from wearing the C to an A. And Trevor Linden was a captain on certain home nights, but it rotated through a series of veterans. But the explanation at the time, which Pat Quinn had given, was that, Trevor's a young kid. He needs to learn what it takes to be a captain in this market, everything that comes with it. Quinn didn't really get that, right? Like you think of, what Quinn had available to him and, the leadership that he would learn from. And we were, disconnected from the Sedin era to some extent. Like Bo Horvat was able to sort of study under the Sedins and I don't want to say was Bo around when Nazi was captain. That I can't remember timeline wise, but you have sort of this legacy. Bo Horvat got it. I don't know if Quinn ever did. And I'm not trying to knock Quinn as a captain. Someone had to wear it. The kid was our best player.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't a knock on Quinn or his like character or his captaincy per se. It's just this market is what it is.
Mhm.
This market has become accustomed to, hey, this team is in the community. These players, you'll see them at charity events. Heck, a little tangent story, but when I was a kid, I got this Marcus Naslund jersey from the Global Variety Telethon, and my grandmother went to Walmart, sat in the pouring rain for 3 hours, and got Marcus Naslund to sign it. I don't
Cool.
see any of these players sitting in the pouring rain under a tarp for 3 hours in the cold, signing jerseys. And I mean,
Yeah.
not that they have to, but it just shows that level of commitment that was there towards, you know, sitting in
I
the cold rain for hours signing stuff.
I think that's a combination of a couple of things. I think it's a generational shift, for one, but also how a lot of marketing activations occur. Like the Vancouver Canucks did have a signing event for season ticket holders, um, which occurred just before they went on their most recent road trip. And yeah, there was some sort of discussion as to, oh, I got to see Quinn Hughes in person, and boy, you could tell he didn't want to be there or what have you. And I'm not trying to suggest that assessment was true. Players handle the public differently, but I draw a parallel to the experience that I had this season with the Vancouver Whitecaps. So my daughter had the opportunity to meet Vancouver Whitecaps captain Brian Gauld, and here he is in the community meeting all these young players, engaging with them. Like one of the kids in front, he actually asked, like, who's your favorite player? And the kid's like, Brian White. And Ryan Gauld's like, yeah, Brian's a great guy. Like, laughed it off, young kid, what have you. I can't say I could see many of the modern day Vancouver Canucks players responding well to that.
You
Um,
know, another
it's just
thing that's
different.
kind of maybe a contributing factor to this is there I believe, like I've seen job posts and stuff, but I believe there's been a lot of turnover in the social media arm of the organization too. Like what was it? Six-ish years ago, like we used to have the the whole recaps of like road trips and stuff. And like,
Mhm.
those videos made you feel very connected, parasocially or not, from the team that's going there, because you can see them on, like going and traveling, and like you get bits of
Yeah,
snippets of the
behind the
locker
scenes.
rooms. Yeah,
Yeah.
you get a little bit of a look in, and
Mhm.
like recently, like you can see on Twitter, like people are congratulating us for having audio on like after game like locker room celebrations, right? Like the bar has lowered considerably onto what was like, a connection to the team. And maybe like not maybe, there's definitely good probably logistical reasons, and like COVID happened and things changed, so and so forth,
I
right?
I I I can't deny that obviously pandemic has an impact, but I've talked on this show how I got my sort of social media start with the Vancouver Canucks with the Vancouver Canucks organization. Like their marketing team wanted to get into social media, hired a third party company. That third party company reached out to a number of different sort of Canucks fans who were creating content in the space, maybe one of them. And, you know, a few years later, they're winning awards. They're one of the most engaged, socially engaged teams in the NHL. The rest of the league has now since caught up. Well, if there has been a change since those early days to where it is now, the organization seems to want to control every aspect of every engagement. And Anna and I spoke about this last week when Quinn Hughes arrives in Minnesota. They have video of him getting off the plane, sitting in a car, being asked questions. And we're learning Quinn doesn't have a winter jacket that's going to be warm enough for the Minnesota winter. His mom is back home in Vancouver packing his stuff for him because obviously he was on the road and then this trade happened. Why do we know that? Because the Wild were capturing and sharing that information. Now, I am a firm believer that the more human you can make your players, the easier it is for us to connect with them. And
For sure.
And that's missing here. You're right. This
Yeah.
team, what would we get? Yeah. Oh, look, they are celebrating a win and they had this song choice. Or more recently, and I'm not going to knock the post game, here's the axe. Every team's got something like that. But that's
That
the
was
glimpse of 5 seconds.
yeah, not even that. Like, from where the standings were, it felt very ironic. Now we're getting X videos as we're 32nd in the league.
It's the celebrate the win meme. I've got strong opinions. I'm not in the industry, so who knows? Maybe my strong opinions are completely bonkers. But I grew up in an era where the Vancouver Canucks, like you could go to the Winning Spirit merch store and the mall, and almost every week there might be a Vancouver Canuck or a Canuck alumni there, just signing autographs. Like anyone could go. I remember how you would see them in the city. They'd be out and about.
Yeah.
You'd see, the human side. And I mean, you sort of fast forward quite a bit. Like Roberto Luongo, when he first came to this market, was somewhat of an enigma. And then during the lockout, when suddenly he just opened it up on social media, and Strombone won. That's Luongo. That gave us a glimpse into the sort of human side of Roberto Luongo. And then, you love him or hate him based on his play. But I think no one would deny that you felt more. I felt you had more ability to understand who he was because you saw, the behind the scenes glimpse. I mean,
Not only
I'm still
that,
jazzed that he slid into my DMs to tell me that one of my comments on Twitter was funny.
yeah,
Right?
not only that, and I mean, maybe this is it's been quite a few years now since he played, and I was a kid, so I didn't really keep up with that much. But you don't have the same rhetoric that's been going around, these people quit on us. And like I think at the time, like maybe you had that because you had the whole my contract sucks come out, right? That big soundbite where he's like, my contract sucks. And then everything happened, and you're like, well, his contract did kind of suck. But
It was an unmovable contract at the time. Why? Because no team could afford him. It sucked.
yeah, and I mean, for whatever it's worth, I think, you know, the outrage is coming from a place of, this hurt. We're losing what was our franchise player, you know. This isn't where we were supposed to be. We've now lost a bunch of what were our key players, and now there's just a bunch of questions. But I think the biggest thing to circle back here now, like, you know, about this connection is we're getting those articles from PJ and others that really show how this ownership group has cheapened out. And it's ridiculous that they're cheaping out on stuff like medical staff. Like, what are
Well,
we doing here?
that blew my mind because like it's one thing to cheap out on what it is that you control, but like the fact that they did not meet the minimum requirement for the quality of medical staff like on employee, I don't understand how the league lets that go. Like there's a lot that the NHL does wrong, but there are things that the league does not budge on. That tends to be one of them. Or how the PA would seem to think that that was okay. It's like, that blows my mind. But to sort of, wrap this conversation up, that article that PJ wrote where he unloaded all barrels, I mean, just the final paragraph, and I'm just going to sort of not paraphrase, I'm going to take a snip of it. He's like, it's seen what the minimum they can get away with. Dragging their feet, the best interpretation here is just typical. A professional sports organization that actually cares about its community, raises everyone up. It doesn't just look at everything as a bag of money to be pilfered. No wonder Quinn Hughes wanted to leave. Like, when that came out, like, to a person,
you can't blame him. Honestly, like, even just look at what the Whitecaps had done this season. Like, going out and getting Thomas Mueller. Like, the team was for sale at the beginning of the season, and then they pull off this
Well, it's still for
generational
sale.
run. Okay,
Yeah.
it's still for sale. But like, there was huge question marks, and the organization, like, when things were going right, they did what was right by the team. They brought someone in like Thomas Mueller, who had look at what he's done in the community. He's been everywhere. He's gone to
Yeah.
everything. He's been to Canucks games.
In the short amount of time that he was here in Vancouver, I'd argue you saw more of him in the community than you had seen of any Vancouver Canuck.
100%.
Yeah. Anyhow, I mean, again, we could probably be on this for forever and a day, but the podcast itself only runs an hour. So as we, look to wrap things up, Derek, thank you so much for joining me, tapping in for Anna, who left me to go home and visit family for the holidays. How rude of her. Am I not friends or family that she should spend time with? But any final words of wisdom you want to share with listeners this episode?
Take a breath, everyone. I mean, we're all kind of in this emotional grieving period of losing Quinn Hughes, and then us on Team Tank are like, "Oh my gosh, we're winning! We're screwed. Our pick is gone." Take a breath. You know, watch these young kids go to work, and like, hopefully, we can see that this management group was serious, and like the owners have finally acquiesced, and we can have what we've been kind of wishing for the past 15 years. A proper uh, rebuild, or a proper approach to rebuild that gets us back into contention sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Thanks for joining me, Derek. I truly appreciate having not only another voice join me for this particular episode for a period of time, but just to hear the perspective of someone else in the Smylosphere to help sort of validate, my thoughts and opinions, but also those that are shared often by Anna. So again, thanks for joining me. If you, one of our listeners, are like, hey, that's kind of cool, I'd maybe like to step up and do that sometime. The easiest way to go about that is to reach out to Anna and I. We're pretty easygoing folk. I mean, you've often heard us talk about us being, the best mediocre Vancouver Canucks and Vancouver Golden Guys podcast. We don't take ourselves too seriously. I can't, even think of the number of times I've suggested there's 137 Canucks podcasts and we're number 138. So again, if you as a listener or just a fan of the Vancouver Canucks or the Vancouver Golden Guys want to join us, talk puck, share a few thoughts, reach out to us. We're on social media. C4 Discord is obviously probably the best way to reach out to us. Discord.io/C4 podcast, or alternatively, you can go to c4podcast.com. There's some contact information there. But then, Derek, thank you so much. Now, if you've reached this point of the show, just another reminder, I've mentioned it a couple of times already. We will not be here with a regularly scheduled episode next week. Anna will still be away. I myself am going away. So the next episode of the C4 Hockey Podcast is going to come to you in 2026. Anna and I will get back together. We'll talk about the couple of weeks that were, and then set up the week that will be as normal. And who knows, maybe we might have another guest join us. You never know with this podcast. And if you've reached this point and you want to throw some support our way, you can do so by going to buymeacoffee.com/C4podcast. Buy me a coffee, otherwise known as buy us a pint. And you can throw a few bucks as a one-off. It's up to you as to the amount that you wish to provide at some point in time. Anna and I will get together, buy ourselves a pint. Alternatively, you can support us on a recurring basis. Doing so gets you access to our back catalog as C4 Off the Rails, the new episodes if and when they get produced. As I had mentioned earlier, I have time off over the course of this week and a half, 2 weeks. I plan on producing the ones that we had recorded over the course of the summer. And once that's done, we'll get back into the regular cadence and start producing a few more of those episodes into the new year. So you get sort of that bonus off the rails, conversation that Anna and I have in small scale on a normal episode, in full scale with C4OTR. If you want to find our back catalog of regular episodes, the vast majority of them are available at c4podcast.com. c4podcast.com is our website. It shows our episode catalog. We've got a list of some of the guests that we've spoken to if you ever want to reach out and engage with them, whether what they've said resonates with you or not. And then if you want to find the podcast on social media, we're at the C4 Podcast on X, at the Real C4 Podcast on Threads, and at c4podcast.com on Blue Sky. Myself, Chris at Lightforce. You can find me consistently across all the social media platforms, and Anna, A4C03, she too, pretty darn consistent. So on behalf of the Missing in Action, Anna, Derek, who happened to join me as a guest, Craig, the robot that makes this magic happen, and me, Chris, I'm going to sign off this episode of the podcast by saying, we out.